Number two, AI everywhere. AI is actually going to be involved in multiple of my top 10 trends that I'm watching, but I'm going to kick off with AI as a risk. It's changing the risk landscape. I would say there are three primary areas that I think about from a third party risk perspective when it comes to AI. Um, One of them is data, obviously, data. AI involves potentially, not always, but training with the data, using data in ways that may or may not be approved, puts us at risk that also a lot more data moving around between tools. So it puts us at risk that we might be violating agreements with our customers, our right to use this data, regulations, say review your contracts, understand what your vendor's doing with the data. Those two things, if we've been very explicit in our contracts and there's no way that data can be used, great. And if there are ways it can be used, is it okay? It may be okay, but do we understand how it's being used? The second one would be decisions, especially when it comes to things that are profiling or having a significant impact on somebody's really like rights. I think about, we've had incidents pop up or issues with companies that are using AI to make decisions about loans. Um, when we have AI making decisions for our business, I think the key thing is making decisions. It may make recommendations, and there's a human in the loop that makes that final decision. Having transparency. What's going into that decision? How's it being made? What evidence do we have around the decision that is made? And what ability do we have to override it? And what kind of oversight do we have on that? Because just having transparency about how it's working and then trusting that it does is kind of going back to a trust model. We need to actually understand how that's happening and have eyes on it and be challenging it, testing it, making sure it's accurate and that we are ultimately responsible for the decisions that AI is making. The last one I would say um, has to do with, I would call it the agentic AI move, that AI has access. Agentic AI is, there's lots of different types of AI, but where AI is taking action for you and tools are able to utilize access that's granted to it to another tool a little more freely than historically. So if we took an automation tool, not to say any one of them, but just these types of tools that enable that you can take something like, say, from a form. I want when this thing's filled out, update this spreadsheet, little things that make our lives easier. But there's that middle tool. When we grant it access, often it has full read or write access into our data store, say. And we used to say, configure it to say, hey, only write to this one file or only read this one file. And it was set. When you bring in AI and you have people be able to enter prompts, you start to introduce a lot of risk that if it has access to more data, it might disclose more data than just from that one file that it was writing to or reading to. So that is to say that it is changing the landscape. These are not new problems, data disclosure, use of data, privacy, compliance. These are not new problems, but this is a new way we might realize them.